Hello and welcome to another session where we discuss or we talk about asylum song and other stories as we prepare for English paper 3. This is Teacher Nancy. Welcome. Specifically, we want to talk about the short story BOYI. BOYI is our second last story in our anthology written by Gloria Mwaniga from Kenya. A story about suffering for families that are affected with militia wars, a story about human rights abuse, a story about evils that can be caused whenever there is war in a community. And in this case, we're talking about land wars, specifically around Mount Elgon area. I think it's based on a true story. But questions of this would be question on human rights abuse. It could be asked to write an essay on human rights abuse and identify instances in the story. You could be asked to write about how people suffer whenever there's a war in a community, and the evils generally. Write an essay on the evils of war. So how do you go about it? What illustrations do we have as far as this story is concerned? Now, when the story starts, there's torture for this family of BOYI. BOYI is our main character, but we learn more about his family. The story focuses on how he gets arrested and how the family suffers. We are told madness entered Mama's eyes the day Baba pushed BOYI to Matakwe, the leader of the militia. And madness entered Mama's eyes. That means psychological suffering started there, and she became depressed. We have Mama stood abruptly as though fire ants had invaded her body. She tore off her kitenge headstaff and started to shout. She told him he was sick in the head and BOYI return and all those statements. But that tells you that she's being tortured psychologically when her son is given away to the militia. She's not the only one. Baba, as much as he's given out his son, Baba just sat there and held his rage firmly in his hand. He pulled his lip to a narrow thread like a line drawn on his dark face by a ruler. And his voice then sank to a metallic whisper. This is for the Baba to react that way. It means he was really, really suffering. Then you find out, apart from this psychological torture, though we have other examples of how Mama suffers psychologically in the text, we have physical torture by the militia on page 92. Baba is trying to explain to Mama why he's given out BOYI, and he's bringing out the physical torture that is being done by this militia. He tells Mama that they are carrying off fresh heads like trophies. They cut people's heads and they hang them on trees and maybe even eat them like Idi Amin. We know Idi Amin of Uganda. So there's that bit about the way these people are suffering. But then again, we come back to the story. Why did Matakwe and team, the militia, come for BOYI? So there's that reason given on that, page 92 still. The militia had a list of people who had aided the government exercise to divide their land. I told you it was land wars. So they have a list of all those people who played a role. And one of them is Baba, because according to them, Baba had lent a panga and makonge ropes to the government surveyors on that day. And this is something that they came to learn, so they don't want anybody collaborating with the government in any way. So when they came to their home, there are threats. These people suffer threats. They demanded, Mzee, give us 10,000 land protection tax and 30,000 betrayal tax today, or we will show you smoke without fire. That is a sign that all is not well. They're going to really suffer. Baba gave them everything he had. He gave them, brought out the metallic box where he kept all his savings under the bed. He gave them his Sony transistor radio. It's referred to as precious Sony transistor radio, which means he really likes it. And his hunting gun, and even offered to sell their bull, the only bull they had. They call it the Mtambakaki, the next day to finish whatever balance that was pending. But the militia did not want to listen. They told him to pay everything or the whole family is finished on that day. Now this something that made Baba to feel very painful. There's betrayal coming out here. He felt so bad that our very boys who ate oaths to protect our ancestral lands have turned on us like hungry chameleons that eat the intestines. So Baba is very bitter about it. Then the next page you have how depression is really affecting them. We still have more on Mama, how she screamed over meals during the weeks. She would say things that would really hurt the children. They could call the girl, the one narrating the story, stupid girl, you want to finish tea and your brother will come. So that she could not be convinced that the brother is not coming. And then Baba is also depressed. He is really affected badly. But then again, Mama, I think mothers generally was worse. She would have monologues, she'd talk alone, things that people do not understand. Then she would sit in the room silently as if there's a fourth room. Whenever they're in the house, she's not talking to anyone. So whenever to take a walk, the madness to take a walk, remember the story is told from the direction of a child. Whenever she would feel okay, she would start talking about how BOYI saved her marriage. So this is her memories when people thought that her womb was not tied up by genes, she would never have children. But BOYI made it possible for her to have children. We also learned that BOYI is actually just 15 years old. Then we also learn about the government coming in to try and deal with the militia. Operation Okoa Maisha is on page 93. And they're out to flush out all this militia team. But we know that one is dangerous because BOYI is already taken in by the militia. Then we have other issues to do with the way they came in, this government, in green army lorries. So many of them arrived. And the women folk abandoned their pots and the children went to see who these people were. But then there's more depression on Mama. She stopped touching her food. She started muttering to herself how ugali will remain untouched until crusty brown filling formed. So you're talking about the suffering and how they go through the depression because of the things the militia are doing. But what are these evil things? From the stories that were bubbling like hot soup, the things that people are saying, they say the militia drink magic potions to ensure that their bodies can become out-fledged, they cannot be seen. And the younger sister, hopes that the brother will survive and that will not be gotten by the army that has been sent. But then there's these evils, more evils about the militia brought out on page 95 of the story. There are stories about how they cut people and threw the bloodied bodies in rivers, pit latrines, and public wells. They now go from house to house, forcefully recruiting young boys as young as 10. That is child abuse. And remember, we talked of human rights abuse, these killings, and taking children as young as 10 is a human rights abuse. And the worst bit is the recruited have to first go back home, kill a close relative so that their hearts are strong to kill others. Again, that is also evil as far as this militia group are concerned. We also have still more of the evil things they do. There's this, how the militia took away young girls to go and cook for them. So they go to homes and they take away girls. One lady, this woman, since she had sent away all her sons, Matakwe gave him, ordered this woman to give out her daughter to go and cook for them. Then there's also more. There's this river, Cheptak, Bulbul, is scarlet with fresh blood from floating human heads. It's that bad. And then there are stories of how the militia raped their own blood relatives. And they even ended up giving birth to children who were said to be transparent. But that is something that tells you that this is very inhuman. If they even rape cases, and we are floating human heads in a river until the water is said to be red, there's a lot of human rights abuse going on. But then again, the villagers are going through a lot because if they have to go through this. Then the news comes to the parents that BOYI is a marked man, is Matakwe's right-hand man. And that means that the soldiers are really looking for BOYI, so he's in trouble. And that really affects Mama again. Her eyes flooded with tears. She put both hands on her head and she said all these things. And the sister who's narrating the story says that night she did not sleep. She got really affected by what she had heard. But then the next day, early the next morning, there's this neighbor, Simone, who gave them a copy of the newspaper telling which the headlines read, "Ragtag militia leaders killed by army forces." And this was now the bad news the family did not want, because it shows that something now is wrong. Because if the boy has become the right-hand man of Matakwe, then he could be among the leaders of this. So this neighbor told them, described how boy was captured deep in the sacred caves, how he was hoisted up in an aircraft, and then after it had ascended high like a kite, he was shoved out by a sergeant without a parachute. Imagine. That is a very painful death. And they're talking about death as a consequence of war. Whenever there's war, we know there are normally casualties like death. So this one is coming out about how boy was killed in a very painful manner. And again, the suffering. Whenever there is death, there is suffering. When Baba read the newspaper, he crumpled to the floor like an old coat. You can describe the way you drop an old coat. It's so painful. And Mama did not frown. He did not frown when Mama's ribbon laughter pierced the early dawn. This laughter is not a normal one. This is due to depression. And the sister narrating the story says, "I let the tears roll down my face. I let them soak my blue silk blouse. Okay? I did not tell Mama what I knew. I did not tell that I had felt like boy's body." So there's depression, a lot of depression. So the people suffer whenever there is war. And you've seen the way they are killed. You've seen the threats. You've seen the physical torture of chopping off of the ears. There's that bit where they are being chopped off ears. Baba tells Mama about it. And then there's feeding of warm field earth to the victims. That physical torture was happening because of this militia. But then the psychological torture was also there in the way Mama and Baba suffered, including the narrator herself. They go through a lot. But then the people, the villagers, there's fear, they suffer fear. There's so seeing the people they know being killed, there's rape. So whenever we're writing an essay on this, let's bring out the instances very clearly so that our essays can score well whenever we do paper 3. Thank you. Welcome. Next time again.